yeah, I heard that.
That'd be the music.
That would be the music.
The theme tune, like.
The theme tune to Come Taste the Band. Guess what you're listening to?
Radio 4 live. Yes, welcome back to all our listeners. And actually, we now definitely have listeners, because I got some feedback from the last podcast that apparently I sounded a bit distant.
Oh, was that you or me?
Me, apparently.
Oh, okay. He does do that sometimes. He does sound a bit distant.
Apparently.
We can be talking in the pub about something and he could just be like drifting off.
You sounded quite clear, apparently. I was a bit distant.
I like to hear myself.
So I've changed the seating arrangements.
I noticed.
Yes.
My feng shui is all different.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Anywho, coming up this podcast, we have the latest album from Dan Lissac vs Scoobios Pip, Replenish, Repeat. I've had to mispronounce it again there. We have Haim. Pronounced like time.
Like time.
Days Are Gone. We have Scott getting an email on his computer.
Yeah,
in the background. We have Sting, The Last Ship, or When the Boat Comes In. Lissie, Back to Forever, sorry.
Yeah.
Pearl Jam, I've already forgotten what it's called. It's called Lightning Bolt.
Lightning Bolt.
And Sleigh Bells, Bitter Rivals. So, without further ado, we should probably start with the third album, or collaboration, I suppose, between Dan Lissac's and Scoobios Pip. And I suppose it's interesting in the sense that the two previous Pip releases, the last Scoobios Pip Dan Lissac album and the solo album, were both kind of our albums of the respective years.
Yeah, they were, weren't they?
Or at least from the in a combined CTV point of view.
Oh yeah, of course.
So,
well,
high standards to keep up to.
Yeah.
Does it do so?
Well, interesting you make that point, and we'll probably return back to it later in the year, because there's certainly a lot of competition, I think, this year for that post. Anyway, in short, yes, the standard's even higher this time. I was going to come in here and talk about the sort of the absolute wit and genius of Scoobios Pip. But actually, the feature of this album that occurred to me on the umpteenth listen is how much better the production and electronica side from Dan Lissac is on this album. His sort of character really comes to the fore in this. So there'll be no surprise if you're a fan of Scoobios Pip. There are no surprises on this album. He's just upped the ante one more time. But actually, I found this time that Dan Lissac was just as interesting to listen to.
Interesting.
Okay, I'll kick it off there. This album takes a darker turn.
There are a couple. Well, actually, the last album wasn't full of sweetness and light.
No, they're not. They're gritty to begin with. But certainly, if there's a theme running through this album, if there's two themes running through this album, it's image, i.e., that which you present to the world, and mental illness, or depression. That's definitely a running theme as well. I mean, the album itself is bookended by two tracks. One of which opens with the opening refrain. I kind of want you to smile, but I want that smile to be through tears, and that sort of kind of dark place is returned to, I think, in the final track, You Will See Me, which sort of takes that idea of depression or loss or revenge to a very ultimate place.
Yes,
which is very dark,
psychopathic kind of place, essentially.
Kind of psychopathic, even almost fascistic, sort of place. It's kind of the what I've always liked about Scoobios Pip is his lyrics, dark, gritty as they may be, always sort of take a negative and turn it around into positive. In that last track, he really sort of explores, well, what if I took this to a darker place rather than a positive, and where does that lead? And it's a fascinating listen. And it's funny, in that final track, when I noticed it, I suppose for the first time, but then subsequently on other parts of the album, the Dan Lissac sort of nuances in the background as well. Standout tracks for me. On a lighter side, it's got to be something like Gold Teeth.
Gold Teeth is quite funny.
Yeah.
Rappers wear bling because they want to look pretty.
Yeah. As Stunner, the opening track and the opening single, I kind of sat a little bit uneasily with. It suits the album better than it did as a sort of standalone release, if that makes sense.
It does.
And obviously, a mention for Night Bus Sleepers as someone who's probably been the subject of that particular tune once or twice.
I think we've both been there. That was both been there, done that, got the t-shirt.
Yeah, exactly. What did you think? Because I've left plenty there.
Yeah, and you have. I was disappointed in this album.
Yeah.
And actually, the thing I dislike most is the thing you said it improved.
Really?
I actually think that a lot of the album is spoilt by the music, quote unquote, background.
Right.
And detracts from what's going on by Pip. So I actually find that unlike the previous two collaborations, particularly the last album, Logical Chance, which I didn't think had a dud track on it, this I'm more finding the couple of tracks that I really like, and the rest of it I'm kind of indifferent to.
Right. Okay.
So I think for me it's a good album, not a great album, whereas I've felt the previous releases have been great albums.
Yeah.
So I'm not slagging it off, saying it's crap, because it's still a good record. However, I think, and when Pip's on form, I think it's still challenging and interesting. As you say, particularly on things like "You Will See Me," which is, I think, is a really good track. "Terminal," which is about kind of terminal illness and about kind of going down to Greenwich.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice.
Sort of nice.
Yeah. Nice. No, if it wasn't so tragic.
Yeah. But it's nicely unsentimental, and that obviously he does lots of spoken word stuff anyway,
yes.
and that's definitely more of a spoken
very
word
close to
thing rather than being a slightly more rappy version of his spoken word.
He's always been spoken word, but he's kind of been out on the road a bit more with that recently as well.
Yeah. So yeah, I just kind of, it was an album that it's quite short, so I've listened to it quite a few times, but unlike the previous albums that have really kind of got under my skin and I want to play again and again and again, this is an album I actually find quite easy to leave.
Oh, right. He's stunned me into silence there. I mean, obviously I disagree. Of course. And if anything, I always preferred the first album to the second, and then now we have this, which I really enjoy. There's the Scott Pete split coming through again. Obviously, I like the beats, I like the electronica. And in many ways, I feel this is more of a collaboration. He says pumping his two hands together. It is very much DLS versus SP. It is very much a half and half, and we've had solo albums by both.
Yeah.
I suppose we've been spoilt with the Scoobios Pip album, as it was one of our favourite albums of that year. So to sort of have him back in the room with Dan Lassac, maybe a different mix to the previous album, which of course was very sort of spoken word and rock, and as well as hip hop. But yeah, no, I've really enjoyed this album, very much so. Sorry.
I enjoyed it less. Moving on, Time is with us and Haim are with us, which are our sisters Esty, Danielle and Alana. And obviously we first kind of encountered these at the start of the year when we were doing the BBC's Ones to Watch thing, of which they were BBC's top tip, and I seem to recall at the time that on the strength of a couple of songs that we felt that seemed to be quite a good call. But the album seems to have taken a hellishly long time to actually surface, considering that we've had a summer that's seemingly seen them play every single festival in the UK and elsewhere. It seems there hasn't been a single time I've switched on kind of festival highlights during the summer at least, when there wasn't them on playing at least one song. So I'm expecting most people will have heard them, even though surprisingly the 4 singles they've released, I think only one of them is actually charted in the top 30 so far. So anyway, the question, I suppose, was whether they could take the kind of promise and critic loveydom and deliver a good album or not. And for me, I have to say, generally speaking, I'd have to say yes. It's firmly planted in the 80s. And let's face it, we've been firmly planted in the 80s, it seems, for half the year, podcast-wise, isn't it? Especially 80s Fleetwood Mac.
Yeah.
Partly due to Danielle's voice having that kind of a Christine McVie kind of tinge to it. And I also felt a bit, sometimes, elements of Ann Wilson from Heart as well. Which had that kind of... that kind of... Not quite as booming and as a thing, but similar kind of tone, at least. So the album kicks off, I think, really well. So it kicks off with 3 out of the 4 singles. So Falling, Forever, which has hints of Stevie Nicks' Edge of 17, and The Wire, which basically has its drum beat lifted straight from the Eagles' Heartache Tonight.
Yeah, oh right, yeah. I was going to say that was planted more in the 70s than the 80s.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And then If I Can Change Your Mind and Honey and I, which has that kind of 50s style reverb on the guitar, which I really like. Before you get to the 4th single, Don't Save Me, which is a track I loved back in January and still love now. And I'd say up until that point, it's pretty much a faultless debut. Rest of it, bit more different, although perhaps deserves a bit more praise in some ways because they're going to mix up the sound a bit more in the latter part of the album. So you have that Days Are Gone thing, which has a chorus that oddly reminded me of Bananarama.
Yeah, no, exactly. Coming from there.
Then there's My Song 5, which is kind of almost kind of thing, Justin Timberlake-y type
That's
thing.
The modern one, right?
Yeah. And then you got Go Slow and Running If You Call My Name, which both have kind of hints of kind of Kate Bush going on in the background as well. And yes, overall, I think it's got hints of Prince, Cyndi Lauper, Ashford and Simpson, all these kind of people. So it is very kind of classic kind of 80s stuff. I think it benefits from having quite a light-handed but clean and unfussy production. So I think the sound is not overly fussy. And overall, I think the songs are pretty good. So I actually think I was about to say solid, but actually I think it's better than but actually I think it's better than solid. I think impressive debut album.
I've been trying so hard the last few podcasts not to say solid. I think I'm succeeding. And apologies in advance if I suddenly say Haim rather than Haim. I can't really disagree with any of that, much as I'd like to, following the previous album review. It's no, I didn't say it. It's very much, as you say, rooted in the 80s, with the odd exception, but done very much in a fresh and modern way. I can't really add much to what you said. The songwriting is incredible. The way they put a song together is brilliant. Practically every track on this album has a commercial feel to it.
Yeah.
There are no sort of duff tracks or
they're all potential.
They're all potential singles.
Yeah.
It's such a strong album. You do worry where they might go next. 1993 perhaps.
Yeah.
But it sort of pulls it all together very nicely. It's a very listenable album. It will succeed.
It will succeed.
It must succeed. Maybe not in the UK though. Hey.
Well, apparently in the States as well, singles haven't done that great.
Really?
I don't think they've.
But is that just a modern thing?
I don't think they've done top 30 in the States either. But
right.
maybe
that's a current thing.
Maybe it's the album will come out, get some more behind it, and then maybe things will get re-released and maybe hit higher.
Yeah, I think so. Or maybe there's the special edition 6 months down the line.
Yes. I'm sure there will be. Out now. Thinking that album that was out 7 months ago.
Yeah. Exactly. So, but it is strong and it's much better than Hanson.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry for the comparison there.
So, we move on to someone I didn't really expect us to be reviewing ever, frankly. But
other than David Bowie.
Well, yeah, I guess.
It's been a year of surprises.
It has. So we come to the 11th studio album and first of completely original material in 10 years from Sting. And as I said at the kick-off, it is called The Ship. and written about the northeast and shipbuilding. And partly of his growing up in his childhood living near Swan Hunter shipyard in Newcastle and demise of the shipping industry. And so it's very much a kind of a love song to the shipping industry in a lot of ways. Apparently he's written a play, and as he said, it's not going to be musical, it's going to be a play with music as opposed to the other way around.
Right.
So some of these songs may eventually crop up in a Broadway musical, but apparently he's working with other people to perhaps rewrite some stuff, and so that it's not all that. Anyway, so essentially it's potentially a musical about shipbuilding. So the last ship bid.
This is like one of the most quizzical albums we've had for quite some time. Because on first listen, you really do wonder where the flippin' heck this is going.
Yes, I think it's safe to say we both have admitted to each other that that we did chuckle out loud at the opening of this record.
Absolutely.
On first listen.
But, and this is a strong but, after 2 or 3 listens, it all makes sense, and it's actually quite an enjoyable record.
I would agree.
The album begins very much in a folk-filled sort of hue. The Last Ship, with the opening track, and actually there's a version at the end as well. So again, a bookended album, sort of sets the scene of the demise. But then in between, you have various stories relating to the ship workers themselves. The second track, in particular, about the young man that actually abandons or wishes he could sort of abandon the trade,
dead men's boots,
and sort of do something his father didn't do.
Yeah, I really like that line. It said, "Dead men's boots know their way down the hill. They can walk there themselves, and they probably will."
Well, exactly. And there's a father-son thing as well running throughout. The language of the birds focuses on the old man with his soul locked away, and the Ballad of the Great Eastern, of course, the infamous story of the corpses found inside the hull. Again, a father and son theme to that particular tune. And there is just a sense of sadness, but a celebration that runs through the album too.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
And there's a lovely ballad right at the end, penultimate track, so to speak.
Yes.
And I was actually more moved by that there's an earlier ballad, Practical Arrangement.
Yeah, but I think it's Practical Arrangement, and I think there's another track that I can't remember what the other song's called. Practical Arrangement and one of the other later tracks seem to be kind of vaguely connected. I love her because she loves somebody else. Almost seems like it's a kind of the Practical Arrangements. Let's get together. It doesn't have to matter if you love me or not, kind of thing. And then that one's it still doesn't quite matter, but apparently you fancy somebody else. Okay.
Yeah. But I found, so to speak, very moving. Again, the old man in the hospital, the father perhaps, sort of life coming, towards its end.
Yeah, dying of cancer by the sound.
Exactly. Very, very, a very poetic and beautiful description of something quite grim. And I found it very touching indeed. So that kind of really pulled me back to, I'm like, way, and that wasn't my accent, by the way. Because up until that point, I'd really been sort of trying to find a way into this album, and that was the hook or the hook that got me. I'm not going to talk about Jimmy Nail. Let's just put that to one side. But you can pick that up if you like. This is actually if you like a story, this is a good album.
Yeah, it is actually quite a good album. It's a surprisingly interesting record. As you say, we both came to it and we both we should have put the warning that actually there is genuine singing in Geordie on this album. So if that kind of stuff offends you, then look away now.
Only if it's Jimmy Nail.
Yeah. And it's not just Jimmy Nail, it's Brian Johnson from AC/DC also crops up. Becky Unthank from the Unthanks.
She's lovely though. She has a lovely voice.
And in fact, her sister's on one of the additional tracks on the extended version of the album as well, which also features Jimmy and Brian also doing some more stuff. Yeah, I agree with you. It's definitely an album that's it's very much Sting. It's it's full of plain folksy melodies that are kind of blended into kind of jigs and waltzes. On the waltzing side, probably done no better than something like The Night the Pugilist Learned How to Dance, which is a lovely kind of tale of typical kind of thing of how boxing and dancing are similar because of the foot movements and stuff like that. But I think it's well done, and it's very much kind of a waltz kind of tune, which I really like. You already mentioned kind of practical arrangement, which I guess says sweet song about a man offering himself to a widowed woman as a partner, which, as I said, the kind of theme kind of comes back with I love her, but she loves someone else. As you say, so to speak, as well as one. The first couple of times I listened to the record, it didn't really. It kind of flowed past me almost, and I was almost back into the Last Ship Reprise. It was really in the last couple of days where it's kind of stood out more for me as a track. Obviously, you haven't mentioned What Have We Got? Which does feature Jimmy Nail.
It's quite catchy.
It's very catchy. I defy anyone to listen to that track a couple of times and not find A, their foot tapping, and B, find themselves wanting to sing along with the chorus.
Sing along, yeah.
Because that is a show tune.
I hate all that though. So
do I. But it is a show tune. This is the one song on the album you can definitely imagine
the chorus
seeing on stage. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Singing this song.
Exactly.
And believe me, you'll find yourself singing along whether you want it or not. So yeah, I think you're right. I think it's actually a surprisingly interesting record. Like I said, there is a deluxe version which has I think 5 additional tracks on it. Again, a couple of those are okay, a couple of them not so good. One called The Shipyard, which is another one that you can imagine being on on a thing, because it actually features Jimmy Nail and Brian Johnson.
He's got him for the lead in this musical, isn't he?
Well, apparently he got him out of retirement because he had officially retired from singing and doing anything, and Sting kind of went, I really want you to sing on this album, and he goes, no, I'm not doing it. Yeah. And go on.
I was always quite a fan of his tunes. Yeah. So I mock it gently, but I was always quite a fan of his tunes.
He was alright, Jimmy. He was fine. Anyway. Moving back to Fleetwood Mac.
Yeah.
We have the second album from Lissie, Back to Forever. It does seem very appropriate that we're reviewing this and Haim at the same time. Obviously, I think we actually reviewed her debut album a couple of years back. And that was more a kind of almost kind of folky 70s version of Fleetwood Mac. Whereas it seems on this one she's decided to go straight to the 80s because that's where everybody is.
It goes.
although unlike Haim, obviously with Lissie she actually sounds more like Stevie Nicks.
Yeah, Stevie Nicks.
And particularly on if you take tracks like Sleepwalking, The Habit, Further Away, Can't Take It Back, they're all kind of brimming with kind of classic kind of 80s Stevie Nicks vocals and arrangements. And it's actually quite an enjoyable record. You know, there are hints of other people elsewhere as well. If you're going to point to saying, oh, it sounds like them or sounds like them. I mean, Cold Fish is a bit kind of Alanis kind of style. They All Want You is a bit kind of Lana Del Rey in that sense. But whilst there's lots of kind of poppiness and fun, I mean. Habit and Further Away, the opening tracks, prime examples of that. The Further Away was reminding me of an ABBA song. I can't think what ABBA song it is. There's a bit in the kind of chorus that just very kind of ABBA-esque, but it's been annoying me that I can't think what it is. So, any of our listeners are listening, which would be nice. If you know the answer to that, feel free to tweet us at CTTV Music.
Nice.
Elsewhere, there's a couple of I think lyrically. At times it's very interesting. I really like Shameless, which seems very apt at the moment because it's a song about how women are treated in the music industry, which with the whole kind of Miley Cyrus stuff going on is quite interesting. You know, with the line, I don't want to be famous if I have to be shameless. Also, I really like the line, so take a shot for free and Photoshop the bits of me that you don't want, which I quite liked. And also Mountaintop Removal, which is a strange title for a song. Even stranger when you consider that it is actually actually gotten into the song as well. It's not one of those ones that's it's called Mountaintop Removal, doesn't actually say that in the song. She actually does say that in the song.
And she goes up the mountaintop and it's been removed.
Yeah. And this a Sting, I suppose, would identify with this, because this is about that kind of, your hometown that's been changed by industry coming in and then industry going out, and the hometown being left kind of decimated. So the mountaintop removal shames our name, and also I really like the line, nothing will grow now, that's not soil, it's just dirt, which is quite good. And also one of the best puns of this podcast, where she goes, I got nothing but mountain debt and fear.
See, I thought the song was very much about America broadly.
Well, she's just singing America.
And its place in the world right now.
I think that's a equally valid reading of the song.
Yeah.
I think it works on more than one level.
Yeah, of course.
So yeah, I it's terrible that, again, I'm sure we'll cover this when we get to the end of the year, that we've mentioned it ourselves, that we seem to be liking quite a lot of albums this year. But again, I actually quite enjoyed this record.
I'll be honest, I found this one harder to get into initially. Repeated listens were required. Yeah. And again, but when you heard it, and I guess it was sort of the second or the third time it really clicked with me as an album. Some of the clever use of lyrics in talking about some of those things you've touched on, but also some of the more personal things as well. And again, like Scoobios Pip, like Sting, that sort of creation of a world where there are very much identifiable characters.
Yeah.
There is the barfly, and there's the guy at the bar that buys everyone a drink, and it's a good time. Good time, Charlie. Where am I dragging that from? But you know what I mean. That guy. I do. And also later on in the album, the sort of the marriage of the relationship that's breaking down. I love the lyric in there. Why would you destroy? It gets something along the lines of, why would you destroy this house for a girl that you hardly know?
Yeah.
It's sort of bringing down the house for a cheap kick. And it's sort of I mean, very very much a lot of empathy there for the audience in that, and it's very much an identifiable character. And in that particular song, very country and western sort of style of storytelling, of lyric telling.
Yes,
as well.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And all other standout tracks for me, Love in the City, very nice sort of sweet, gentle ballad, a bit sort of more acoustic. And I Don't Want to Go to Work, a real sort of rabble rousing, I don't want to go to work, you don't pay me what I'm worth. He said lyrics that are very memorable. So I very 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 much enjoyed some of this album, but as I say, repeated listens were required just to sort of find my way.
So we stick with America,
and
Americana, and the 10th studio album from Pearl Jam. Which I suppose that's all we need to say, really. It's the 10th studio album from Pearl Jam.
Yeah,
so,
what can you say?
It's the 10th studio.
Well, it's been... the album, of course, is Lightning Bolt. I was trying to top this out. It's been the best part of 15 years since I listened to a brand new Pearl Jam album. So
it's not a lot changed.
No. No. Well, first couple of tracks, it was all sort of very happy and middle of the road. And I thought, that's what's changed. So I was kind of disappointed. But actually, the further the album goes on, they sort of find their feet again. And you could be listening to a Pearl Jam album from 15 years ago in places. It sort of goes back to that sort of territory. It's not unfamiliar ground. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I quite enjoyed that. But as with the previous album, the Lissie album, again, some interesting sort of songs, and some sort of new stuff, but like Get Away, the opening track, that's the one I sort of found, the popular one. But again, things like My Father's Son, Yellow Moon, certainly Future Days right at the end there, very much classic Pearl Jam territory.
Indeed, yeah. It's interesting. There's been. I'll start at the end and go back almost here. I've seen quite a few people online, certainly in my Twitter feed, who I've been hailing this as one of the band's best albums.
Sure.
I don't necessarily agree with that, and
No.
would politely recommend they re-listen to the back catalogue again.
Exactly.
I say that because whilst this is a good record, partly what you were saying there, I think the band have done most of these songs on here before and better. You know, I mean, Eddie Vedder and Co can write kind of this stuff in their sleep almost. So because of that, it risks of ending being a merely acceptable Pearl Jam by numbers, comfort zone kind of record. However,
Sure.
I think it does manage to rise above that, simply because they are very good at what they're doing, and because the songs are, generally speaking, pretty good. I say, Getaway is a really catchy tune. Great way to start the album. Mind Your Manners is one of their typical kind of, we're still occasionally a frustrated heavy metal band, punk band, so we do that. My Father's So Much You Mentioned amused me greatly because the kind of bass in that it sounded like Pearl Jam doing New Model Army. Yeah. Which was very bizarre in its own kind of way.
Yeah.
Sirens, the first ballad, I think is a really great tune, really beautiful song. And as you say, the rest of the album is pretty solid. Solid Hole has kind of remind me a bit of REM, funnily enough. I liked the kind of bluesiness of Let the Records Play, which was a bit different. Yeah. And it's I am a Pearl Jam fan, and for many years they were certainly one of my favourite bands. And I think this is a good album simply because I think they're the kind of band that don't make bad albums.
Yeah.
But for me, it's not one of their greatest albums. But it's still a good record because
I agree. I mean, sorry for agreeing. I agree. I actually ranked this album higher than the Lissie album initially, but actually, I think I'm preferring the Lissie album now.
Is she thin?
Nah, it's a silly pun.
And so, on to the third album in as many years from Sleigh Bells. Yeah.
Really? Have we reviewed the other two?
We reviewed the last one. We didn't review the first one.
No,
we famously didn't review the first one because that was the one Treats, which I really liked. Yeah. And we reviewed the second one last year that I was slightly disappointed in. Yeah. And you actually quite liked.
Did I?
Oh.
Right. And we saw them live, of course, as well.
Yes, we did see them live. Yes. Yeah. I was on the back of the first album.
Well, that was the back of the first. Right. Yeah.
Okay. So this is, like I said, the third album, and they're certainly going with the "if it ain't broke, don't fix it" approach. No. And that basic is hard rock guitars of Derek Miller laid over kind of R&B, disco, hip hop beats with kind of Alex Krauss singing, and that predominates the album as it has done the previous two albums. Although there are, as the album goes on, moments where the acoustic guitar appears, or there's almost no guitar. So stuff like Young Legends and To Hell With You, where Alexis Krauss's kind of classic kind of sugar pop vocal style really kind of shines through. But I said on the start of the album, you've basically got the kind of power chords kind of start, so a bit of Rivals. Managed to quote Dickens at the start, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. Can't get better than that. A bit literary, a bit of Tale of Two Cities light.
Well done. Google quote.
Exactly, yes. But then you got stuff that just makes me laugh, like Minnie, which was I just love the kind of refrain, that kind of Minnie, go count your pennies. I'm sorry to say you don't have many, which I just like. And Sing Like a Wire, which is pure 80s heaven with a power chord chorus. Bizarrely, there's a really weird bit you get in the end album. Yes. You get Love Sick, which is the great lost unrecorded Spice Girls song.
Yes, yeah.
I could seriously just picture the Spice Girls doing that song. It's just really, really weird. It also has, and it's the final line of the album, the best line of any of the albums in this podcast, which is I'm sending gummy bears to the electric chair.
Cool.
For that alone,
Yeah.
this album deserves kudos.
Picking up on the point, it does get poppier, I think, as the album goes on.
It does, yes.
Finishing with the near Spice Girls number. I don't know. I can't remember. It's a track in it. I can't remember which one. I think it was "You Don't Get to Get Me Twice." I think there's a riff which is very much Saint Etienne's version of "Only Love Will Break Your Heart," dun, 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 which was sort of very cleverly played with. And it's the second podcast running we've actually had a sample of something that's been used, I think. And I don't think it was intentionally a sample, but it just really sort of reminded me of that. So that, again, sort of marking the progression as the album sort of goes from thrashier to poppier.
Yeah.
Track 2 I really enjoyed, Sugarcane, but I'm convinced we've heard it before. Quite a lot
of the songs do sound a bit like that.
Yeah, possibly I don't know. It's very reflective of their sort of style from the previous album, or maybe I even premiered this song during the gig we went to about 2 years ago. But as soon as I heard that, it was very familiar, but not in a bad way.
Yeah,
you know. So yeah, it's an enjoyable album. I mean, bless you for sort of remembering what I said last time. I quite enjoyed it.
The only reason I remembered is because I was disappointed the last one. That's the only reason I remember.
Would you say that you're more approving of this album?
Yes, I think it's not. I'm not going to do the return to form thing. I don't think they had any form essentially to return to. But yeah, I think this album for me holds them together much better than the second album.
They sound like a tighter act now, and I guess that comes with age. They've been annoying some people on. They appeared on the Jimmy Kimmel show, I think, and they had some horns and a proper drummer and a second guitarist, and people were up in arms. That it wasn't just them on stage. It was like, whoa, progression. No, don't do that. Cool. No, it felt tighter. But there you go.
So I'm guessing your album of the month is. Sack and Pip.
Yep. But it's been an interesting month. I keep getting this every podcast we do, apart from the fact we seem to be agreeing a lot more this month. There are other albums there. It's not just a case of a standout album and the rest are sort of meh. The Haim album and hold me back. The Sting album is actually very enjoyable as well. Yeah, but yeah, it's Pip and Lissie.
Yeah, I would probably go for. I'd probably go for the Haim album actually. But as you say, it would be the Sting album would be quite close behind.
Yeah, unbelievably. Even from when I started listening to it, I've done a whole 180 degrees on that. But there you go. That's music.
Indeed.
Right.
That was.
Come taste the band.
Until next time.
Yep.
You've been listening to the CTTV Music Podcast.